So much has changed in our schools from kindergarten all the way through college. Most people aren't aware of it because almost nobody says it out loud. You don't even have to attack what's happening in schools. You merely have to read the lesson plans out loud. The details are horrifying. And again, nobody ever does that. So tonight we're going to. Here's one example, Seattle. Public schools there have begun teaching Black Lives Matter lesson plans to students, a political party's platform being read as education to kids. Teachers are told that no matter their students' age, quote, they're not too young to talk about race. According to the lesson plan in Seattle, quote, silence about race reinforces racism, end quote, which is untrue. It's a lie, but that's the lesson plan. Educators are cautioned that, quote, treating everyone the same may be unintentionally oppressive. Equality is racism. Meanwhile, in Philadelphia, an elementary school is forcing fifth grade students to celebrate black communism, quote, and simulate a Black Power rally in honor of political radical Angela Davis, a communist. Insanity. Jason Rantz is a radio show host in Seattle. He's been on top of the story for quite some time now. We're happy to have him on tonight. Jason, good to see you. Has anyone pushed back against what's happening in Seattle schools?
Yes, when parents figure out what's going on, they push back. The problem is a lot of the parents didn't realize that this was going to be part of the lesson plan. I mean, on paper, when you're told that your kid is going to be learning about equality or equity, well, that would make sense to the average parent who doesn't realize that schools mean something different when they say equity and equality. They are talking about it in pretty fringe political terms, not what normal people would generally think of when we say equity. When schools say equity, they actually mean different outcomes. They don't actually mean equity. So, you know, there's coded language here that they're not really picking up on. And when we have remote learning situations and the parent is in the other room overhearing what their kid is being taught, all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, this is wrong. And they are speaking up. The problem is oftentimes their complaints are falling on deaf ears.
How many people in Seattle who were upset about the death of George Floyd over Memorial Day realized that that event would mean their kids' education was abruptly ended and replaced with political propaganda? Do you think any of them knew that at the time?
They probably didn't know that, but Seattle is also a pretty weird place. I mean, half of them probably are not upset with this. But what seems pretty clear is these kids are getting it both at the home, but also now in the classroom, in some cases, some of this propaganda. I mean, your opening monologue, I think, said it perfectly. When you're putting in front of kids as early as kindergarten a set of talking points to get them to believe something, it's much easier to develop and mold their minds into one particular perspective. When you're telling them as a kindergartner that black lives are systematically and intentionally targeted for demise, which is part of the lesson plan, or that any incarceration of black people, any incarceration is, quote, an act of state violence. When you're giving them context-free data points like black Americans are killed at disproportionately higher rates than white Americans, they're not understanding the nuance of any of these points. You're not giving them the context of why that might be. Disproportionality arguments tend to be incredibly lazy because you don't tell them why. You don't give them any of the data that can make a better argument.
It's really radical. Jason Rantz, I appreciate your bringing this to light. Thank you.